The overhead compartment refused to close, no matter how many times Maya pressed against it. Her carry-on bag, stuffed with professional blazers and the laptop she'd saved 8 months to buy, jutted out at an awkward angle. She was already sweating through her blouse, already feeling the familiar tightness in her chest that came whenever she found herself in spaces where she didn't quite belong. First time. Flying? The voice came from behind her, dripping with something that wasn't quite curiosity. Maya turned to find 3 young women about her age waiting in the aisle. The one who had spoken wore a designer tracksuit and held a phone with a glittering case. Her 2 companions flanked her like accessories, their expressions carrying that particular blend of amusement and disdain that Maya had learned to recognize over 22 years of navigating predominantly white spaces. "I've got it," Maya said quietly, turning back to the compartment. "Clearly you don't." The woman in the tracksuit pushed past her, her shoulder connecting with Maya's arm harder than necessary. "Some of us have actual places to be." Maya stepped back, pressing herself against the seats to let them pass. She caught the eye of an elderly white woman in the window seat, who offered a small, sympathetic smile before returning to her magazine. The reaction was familiar too, the silent witnesses. The people who saw but chose the comfort of non-involvement. She finally managed to close the compartment and sank into her middle seat, row 23. The flight from Atlanta to Chicago was only 2 hours. 2 hours, and then she would be at the headquarters of Morrison and Associates, one of the most prestigious architecture firms in the Midwest. 2 hours, and her summer internship would begin the opportunity she had fought for since her freshman year at Spelman College. Maya pulled out her phone and scrolled to the acceptance email. She had read probably 100 times. "We are pleased to offer you a position in our Summer Excellence Program. Your portfolio demonstrated exceptional talent and vision." She had cried when she received it. Her mother had cried harder, had held Maya's face in her hands and whispered, "My baby is going to build things. Beautiful things." The plane began to fill. Maya watched passengers shuffle past, dragging luggage and corralling children. She noticed the 3 women from earlier had settled into the row directly in front of her. First class had apparently been full. Or perhaps they simply preferred the back of the plane for reasons she couldn't fathom. The one in the tracksuit, whom Maya had mentally dubbed Designer Girl, was already complaining loudly about the seat width. "This is literally inhumane," Designer Girl announced to her friends. "I can't believe we couldn't get upgraded. My father's going to hear about this." Her friends murmured their agreement. One of them, a blonde with sharp features, twisted around in her seat to examine Maya with unconcealed interest. "Where are you headed?" the blonde asked. Her tone suggested the question was less about friendliness and more about assessment. "Chicago," Maya answered. "For an internship." "Oh, how sweet." The blonde turned back to her friends, her voice carrying easily in the cramped cabin. "She's going to an internship. Probably some diversity thing. You know how companies love their quotas these days." Maya felt the words land in her stomach like stones. She had heard variations of this sentiment her entire academic career at her magnet high school in Savannah, at Spelman during joint events with other universities, at every competition where her designs were judged against those of her peers. No matter how hard she worked, no matter how many nights she spent perfecting her renderings and calculations, there was always someone eager to suggest that her achievements were not truly her own. She put in her earbuds and closed her eyes, willing the flight to pass quickly. The turbulence started somewhere over Tennessee, jostling drinks and sending nervous murmurs through the cabin. Maya gripped her armrest and focused on her breathing. She had never loved flying the lack of control, the forced proximity to strangers, the way her ears always popped painfully during descent. The seatbelt sign illuminated with a soft chime. A flight attendant, a middle-aged man with kind eyes, moved down the aisle collecting cups and ensuring everyone was secured. "Excuse me." Designer girl's voice cut through the cabin noise. "My friend needs ice for her drink." The one you brought was practically room temperature. "Mom, I'll need you to remain seated until the turbulence passes," the flight attendant said patiently. "I'll be happy to assist once the captain turns off the seatbelt sign. This is ridiculous." Designer girl turned to her friends with an exaggerated eye roll. "The service on this airline is absolutely pathetic." The flight attendant moved on, and Maya felt a small measure of relief that the attention had shifted away from her. She pulled up the design software on her phone, reviewing the mock-up she had prepared for her first day. Morrison and Associates had asked each intern to bring preliminary sketches of a community space, something that reflected their design philosophy. Maya had chosen to reimagine the public library in her childhood neighborhood, transforming it from a forgotten brick building into a space that celebrated light, community, and heritage. "What are you working on?" Maya looked up. The elderly woman beside her had set down her magazine and was peering at Maya's phone screen with genuine interest. "Just some architectural designs," Maya said. "I'm interning at a firm this summer." "How wonderful." The woman extended a weathered hand. "I'm Dorothy. 40 years in education before I retired. I always appreciate young people with ambition." "Maya, it's nice to meet you." "That building looks beautiful," Dorothy said, studying the rendering. "I love the windows. They remind me of a church my grandmother used to take me to in Mississippi." Maya felt something warm bloom in her chest. She had drawn inspiration from exactly that, the tall, narrow windows of black Southern churches, the way they transformed ordinary light into something sacred. "That's exactly what I was going for," she admitted. "I wanted the space to feel like it belonged to the community, like it remembered where they came from." "You have a gift," Dorothy said simply. "Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." Before Maya could respond, a sharp voice pierced their quiet moment. "Can you keep it down back there? Some of us are trying to rest." Designer girl had twisted around in her seat again, her face pinched with irritation, her eyes fixed on Maya with unmistakable hostility. "We were just having a conversation," Dorothy said mildly. "Well?" "Have it more quietly." Designer girl turned back around, muttering something to her friends that made them snicker. Maya felt her face grow warm. The humiliation was a familiar sensation, a burning that started in her cheeks and spread down her neck. She'd spent a lifetime being made to feel that she was too loud, too visible, too present in spaces where others believed she did not belong. Dorothy reached over and patted Maya's hand. "Some people carry their ugliness on the inside," she said softly. "It has nothing to do with you." Maya nodded, but the words did little to ease the knot forming in her throat. The turbulence grew worse. The plane shuddered and dropped, drawing gasps from passengers throughout the cabin. Maya closed her eyes and tried to focus on something, anything, other than the sensation of falling. She thought about her mother, who had driven her to the airport before dawn and pressed a small cross into her palm. She thought about her younger brother Marcus, who had made her promise to bring back Chicago pizza. She thought about the library she would build someday, the communities she would serve, the legacy she would create. "Oh my God, what is that smell?" Designer girl's voice was theatrical, designed to carry. Maya opened her eyes to find the woman standing in the aisle despite the seatbelt sign. Her nose wrinkled in exaggerated disgust. "I think it's coming from back there." The blonde pointed vaguely in Maya's direction. "Maybe someone brought outside food. I specifically brought my own snacks because I have dietary restrictions," Maya said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "Almonds and an apple. Nothing that would have a strong smell." "Are you calling me a liar?" Designer girl took a step closer, her friends rising behind her like a chorus of disapproval. I'm saying my food doesn't smell, Maya replied. The third woman, who had been mostly silent until now, leaned forward. You know, it's really rude to bring ethnic food on a plane. Some of us have sensitivities. Almonds aren't ethnic food, Maya said, bewildered by the accusation. Everything about you is ethnic, the blonde sneered. That's probably why you got your little internship, isn't it? Companies just love to parade people like you around for their diversity reports. Maya felt the words land like physical blows. She had heard them before, in different variations, from different mouths. But there was something about being trapped in this metal tube at 30,000 feet, surrounded by strangers who watched but said nothing. That made the cruelty feel particularly acute. That's enough. Dorothy's voice was firm. You young ladies should sit down before you get us all in trouble. Mind your own business, Grandma, Designer Girl snapped. The flight attendant appeared, his expression strained. Ladies, I need everyone in their seats immediately. We're experiencing significant turbulence, and standing is a safety hazard. Fine. Designer Girl shot one last venomous look at Maya before returning to her seat. But this isn't over. Maya stared at the seat back in front of her, trying to process what had just happened. She had done nothing to provoke these women. She had existed, quietly and unobtrusively, and somehow that had been enough to make her a target. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother. Praying for safe travels, baby. So proud of you. Maya blinked back tears and typed a quick response. Love you. Almost there. The turbulence eased as the plane began its descent into O'Hare. Maya watched Chicago materialize below the sprawl of buildings. The glittering expanse of Lake Michigan. The grid of streets that represented everything she had worked toward. In a few hours, she would be standing in the offices of Morrison and Associates, shaking hands with the architects whose work had inspired her since high school. But first, she had to survive this flight. Designer Girl and her friends had been quiet since the flight attendant's intervention. But Maya could feel their attention like a physical weight. Every few minutes, one of them would glance back, their eyes lingering on Maya with undisguised contempt. She kept her own gaze forward, refusing to give them the satisfaction of seeing her discomfort. The captain's voice crackled over the intercom, announcing their final approach. Passengers began gathering their belongings, checking phones, preparing for arrival. The normalcy of it all felt surreal to Maya, who was still trying to process the casual cruelty she had experienced. You know, you should really learn your place. Maya didn't immediately register that the words were directed at her. She was reaching for her bag in the overhead compartment when the voice registered Designer Girl, standing in the aisle, blocking Maya's path. Excuse me? Maya said, You heard me. Designer Girl stepped closer, her friends flanking her once again. People like you always think you can just walk into spaces where you don't belong. Take opportunities from people who actually deserve them. I earned my internship, Maya said, her voice trembling slightly despite her best efforts. I earned it through my work, my grades, my portfolio. You don't know anything about me. I know everything I need to know, Designer Girl said. I can see it. What happened next occurred so quickly that Maya would later struggle to reconstruct the exact sequence. Designer Girl's hand came up, whether to point, to gesture, or to make contact. Maya couldn't be certain and connected with Maya's cheek. The sound was sharp, startling, a crack that seemed to echo through the suddenly silent cabin. For a moment, time suspended. Maya stood frozen, her hand rising to her stinging face, her mind struggling to comprehend what had just happened. She had been slapped. On a plane. By a stranger. For existing. Oh my God, the blonde gasped, but she was laughing. Her phone raised as if she had been hoping to capture exactly this moment. Something shifted in Maya. Years of swallowed words. Suppressed anger, accumulated humiliation, they coalesced into a crystalline clarity. She did not raise her hand in retaliation. She did not scream or cry. Instead, she took a deep breath and spoke in a voice that carried throughout the cabin. "Everyone just saw you assault me." On camera, Maya pointed to the multiple phones that had appeared throughout the cabin, recording the confrontation. In federal airspace, where assault is a federal crime. Designer girl's expression flickered. "I barely touched you. Don't be so dramatic." "You struck me in the face," Maya said calmly. "And there are at least 15 witnesses." She looked around the cabin, meeting the eyes of passengers who had watched everything unfold. "Am I wrong? Did you all see what happened?" The chorus of nods and murmured confirmations seemed to physically diminish Designer Girl. Her bravado wilted as the reality of her situation began to dawn on her. "This is ridiculous," she said, but her voice had lost its edge. "I'm calling my father." "I'd suggest calling a lawyer instead," Dorothy said from her seat. "You just committed assault in front of an entire plane." The plane touched down with a gentle bump, but no one moved. The captain's voice came over the intercom with an unusual announcement. Passengers were to remain seated until further notice. Maya knew immediately what that meant. The flight crew had been informed of the incident, and authorities were being notified. Designer Girl's confidence had completely evaporated. She sat hunched in her seat, whispering frantically into her phone while her friends scrolled through what Maya could only assume were the videos, already proliferating across social media. The blonde's earlier amusement had transformed into something closer to panic. "This is going to be everywhere," she hissed to Designer Girl. "My parents are going to kill me." "Just shut up." Designer Girl snapped. "Let me think." Maya remained standing in the aisle, her cheeks still warm from the blow. She felt oddly calm, as if the physical impact had somehow reset her nervous system. Around her, passengers offered quiet words of support. A woman across the aisle, who had witnessed everything, assured Maya she would provide a statement. A man in a business suit pressed his card into her hand and identified himself as a civil rights attorney. "What's your name, dear?" Dorothy asked, gathering her own belongings. Maya Thompson. Maya Thompson." Dorothy smiled. "I have a feeling I'm going to be reading about you for years to come. That library you showed me, you're going to build it someday. And it's going to be magnificent." The aircraft door opened, and 2 uniformed officers boarded the plane. They moved down the aisle with purpose, their expressions professionally neutral. Maya noticed that one of them was a black woman about her mother's age, her badge identifying her as Officer Rachel Brooks. "We received a report of an assault on this flight," Officer Brooks said. "Can someone point me to the parties involved?" Almost immediately, a dozen hands gestured toward Designer Girl and her companions. Several passengers began speaking at once, offering accounts of what they had witnessed. Officer Brooks raised a hand for silence and turned to Maya. "Are you the victim of the reported assault?" "Yes, ma'am," Maya said. "She struck me in the face during the flight. There are multiple witnesses and video recordings." Officer Brooks nodded. "And these are the individuals who assaulted you?" "The one in the tracksuit hit me. The other 2 were with her and had been harassing me throughout the flight." Designer Girl stood abruptly. "This is a huge misunderstanding. I barely touched her. She's completely exaggerating. Do you know who my father is?" "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to sit down and remain calm," Officer Brooks said, her tone leaving no room for argument. "We'll be taking statements from all parties involved." "You can't do this to me," Designer Girl protested, her voice rising. "I have rights. I wanted to call my lawyer." "You'll have that opportunity," Officer Brooks assured her. "But first, I need you to understand that assault on an aircraft is a federal offense. This isn't a misunderstanding you can smooth over with a phone call." The next hour passed in a blur of statements, forms, and official procedures. Maya sat in a small office at O'Hare, recounting the events of the flight to Officer Brooks and her partner, a quietly efficient man named Officer James Chun. She described the initial comments, the escalating harassment, the moment of physical assault. She provided her contact information, her identification, her reason for traveling to Chicago. "I'm supposed to start an internship today," Maya said, glancing at her phone. "At Morrison and Associates. They're expecting me in 2 hours." "We'll get you on your way as quickly as possible," Officer Brooks assured her. "But I want you to understand your options here. You have the right to press charges for assault. Given the witnesses and video evidence, this is a very strong case." Maya considered the question carefully. Part of her wanted to let it go, to simply move on with her life and focus on the opportunity ahead. But another part, the part that had been silent for too long, that had absorbed countless small humiliations in the name of keeping the peace, demanded recognition. "Yes," she said finally. "I want to press charges." Officer Brooks nodded. "Good. What happened to you today wasn't just rudeness. It was assault, and the women who did this need to be held accountable." As Maya signed the final paperwork, her phone buzzed with an incoming call. The number was unfamiliar, but the Chicago area code made her answer. "Maya Thompson?" "This is Richard Morrison, founding partner at Morrison and Associates." Maya's heart stuttered. "Mr. Morrison, I'm so sorry. I was planning to call. I'm running late because of an incident on my flight, but I'll be there as soon as." Maya slowed down. Richard Morrison's voice was warm, unhurried. "I've already heard about what happened. A colleague of mine was on that flight and sent me the video. I'm calling to tell you 2 things." Maya held her breath. "First, take all the time you need today. Your internship will be waiting for you whenever you're ready. Second, I want you to know that the courage and composure you displayed on that plane is exactly the kind of character we value at this firm. You conducted yourself with remarkable dignity in an appalling situation." Maya felt tears prick in her eyes for the first time since the incident. "Thank you, sir. That means more than you know. Get some rest. Come in tomorrow morning and we'll give you a proper welcome. And Maya, don't let anyone make you feel like you don't belong here. Your portfolio speaks for itself." The video went viral within hours. By the time Maya reached her small Airbnb near downtown Chicago, the clip had been viewed over 2 million times. She watched it once, seeing herself as others, had a young black woman standing with quiet dignity as a stranger struck her face. Then calmly and methodically dismantling her attacker's power through truth and composure. The comments were a mixture of outrage, support, and the inevitable ugliness that accompanied any viral moment. Maya forced herself to stop reading after a few minutes. She showered, changed into comfortable clothes, and called her mother. "Baby, are you okay?" Her mother's voice cracked with emotion. "I've been watching the news all day. That woman, what she did to you. I'm okay, Mama, I promise. I pressed charges, and the police were really helpful. And Mr. Morrison called personally to make sure I knew my internship was secure. I'm so proud of you." Her mother was crying now, the tears audible through the phone. "The way you handled yourself. Your grandmother would have been so proud." They talked for nearly an hour, until Maya's exhaustion finally caught up with her. She fell asleep with her phone still clutched in her hand, dreaming of buildings made of light. The next morning, she dressed carefully in her best professional outfit, a navy blazer, tailored pants, the simple gold earrings her father had given her before he passed. She took a rideshare to Morrison and Associates, watching the Chicago skyline grow larger through the car window. The firm occupied the top 3 floors of a glass tower in the Loop. Maya stepped into the elevator, pressed the button for the 42nd floor, and watched the numbers climb. When the doors opened, she found herself in a bright, Airy reception area filled with architectural models and oversized photographs of completed projects. Maya Thompson? A young woman with a warm smile approached, extending her hand. I'm Jessica, Mr. Morrison's assistant. He asked me to bring you straight to his office. Everyone's been looking forward to meeting you. Maya followed Jessica through the open floor plan, past clusters of architects bent over drafting tables and glowing computer screens. She noticed people looking up as she passed, their expressions curious, and she thought, welcoming. Richard Morrison's office occupied a corner of the building with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the lake. He rose as Maya entered, a tall man in his 60s with silver hair and kind eyes. Maya, welcome to Morrison and Associates. He shook her hand firmly. How are you feeling after yesterday? Ready to work, Maya said honestly. Morrison smiled. That's exactly what I wanted to hear. But before we get started, there's something you should know. The young woman who assaulted you, her name is Brittany Caldwell. Her father is Douglas Caldwell, a significant real estate developer in this city. Maya felt her stomach tighten. I see. His lawyer called me this morning, suggesting that you might want to drop the charges. He implied that pursuing this matter could have consequences for your career. For a moment, Maya felt the familiar weight of powerlessness settling onto her shoulders. This was how it always went, wasn't it? The people with money and connections could make problems disappear, while people like her were expected to quietly accept injustice in exchange for opportunity. But then she thought about the video, the witnesses, the passengers who had stepped forward to support her. Officer Brooks, who had treated her case with the seriousness it deserved. With respect, Mr. Morrison, Maya said carefully, I'm not going to drop the charges. What she did was wrong. And if pursuing justice means facing consequences, then I'll face them. Morrison's smile widened. Good. That's exactly what I told his lawyer. I also told him that if anyone at his firm attempts to interfere with your career, I'll make sure every architecture publication in the country knows about it. He gestured to a chair. Sit down, Maya. Let me tell you about the project I want you to work on this summer. The project was everything Maya had dreamed of: a community center in Bronzeville, one of Chicago's historically black neighborhoods. Morrison and Associates had been selected to design a space that would house a library, job training facilities, and a performance venue. The firm wanted fresh perspectives, and Richard Morrison had specifically requested that Maya join the team. This neighborhood has a rich history, Morrison explained, spreading blueprints across his desk. It deserves architecture that honors that heritage while looking toward the future. When I saw your library design, I knew you understood what that meant. Maya spent the next several weeks immersed in the work, collaborating with senior architects while developing her own contributions to the project. She visited Bronzeville repeatedly, walking its streets and talking to residents about what they wanted from the space. She attended community meetings, took notes, and let the neighborhood's voice shape her designs. The legal process moved more slowly. Brittany Caldwell had been arrested and charged with simple assault, but her lawyers were pushing for the charges to be reduced or dismissed. Maya received periodic updates from the prosecutor's office, each one reminding her that the wheels of justice turned at their own pace. What she hadn't expected was the public response. The video of the incident continued to circulate, sparking conversations about racism, privilege, and accountability. Maya received hundreds of messages of support from strangers who had experienced similar treatment, from young black women who saw themselves in her composure, from parents who wanted to use her story to teach their children about dignity under pressure. She also received hate mail, strangers who blamed her for the incident, who accused her of playing the victim, who told her she didn't belong in spaces like Morrison and Associates. Maya learned to delete these messages without reading them, to focus on the work that gave her purpose. One afternoon, about 2 months into her internship, Maya was reviewing her designs in the firm's main conference room when Jessica appeared at the door. "There's someone here to see you," Jessica said, her expression uncertain. "She says her name is Dorothy. She claims you met on a plane?" Maya's face lit up. "Dorothy, please send her in." The elderly woman who had sat beside Maya on that fateful flight entered the conference room with a warm smile. She looked exactly as Maya remembered her gentle eyes, silver hair pinned neatly back, a cardigan despite the summer heat. "I hope you don't mind me dropping by," Dorothy said. "I was visiting my daughter here in Chicago, and I couldn't leave without seeing how you were doing. I'm so glad you came." Maya embraced her. "How did you find me?" "Oh, I have my ways." Dorothy winked. "Actually, I just called the firm and told them I was a witness in your case. They were very helpful." Maya showed Dorothy around the office, introducing her to colleagues and explaining the Bronzeville project. Dorothy listened with genuine interest, asking thoughtful questions about the design choices and community input. "This is beautiful work," Dorothy said finally, studying the latest renderings. "You're building something that will matter to people for generations. Just like I told you on that plane, you have a gift." "I'm also pressing forward with the charges," Maya said. "The trial is scheduled for next month." Dorothy nodded approvingly. "Good. Accountability matters. That young woman needs to learn that her actions have consequences." "Her father's lawyers keep trying to make it go away," Maya admitted. "They've offered settlements, made implications about my career. But I'm not backing down." "Of course you're not." Dorothy patted her hand. "You stood up to her on that plane when you had every reason to stay silent. You're not going to give up now." The trial took place on a crisp October morning at the federal courthouse in Chicago. Maya arrived early, dressed in a simple black dress and the gold earrings her father had given her. Her mother had flown in from Savannah to be there, along with her brother Marcus, who had taken time off from his first year at Morehouse to support her. The courtroom was surprisingly full. In addition to her family, Maya spotted Dorothy, Richard Morrison, several colleagues from the firm, and a handful of passengers from the flight who had traveled to testify on her behalf. The support was overwhelming, a physical reminder that she was not alone. Brittany Caldwell sat at the defendant's table with her team of expensive lawyers, her expression carefully neutral. Her father was notably absent. Maya had heard rumors that Douglas Caldwell had distanced himself from his daughter's legal troubles after the negative publicity began, affecting his business dealings. The trial itself was brief. The video evidence was damning, the witness testimony consistent and compelling. Maya took the stand and recounted the incident with the same composure she had displayed on the plane, answering the defense attorney's questions without wavering. "Miss Thompson," the defense attorney pressed, "isn't it possible that my client's hand accidentally made contact with your face during the turbulence? That this was all a misunderstanding blown out of proportion?" "The plane had already landed," Maya replied calmly. "We were at the gate. There was no turbulence." And she looked directly into my eyes before she struck me. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours before returning a guilty verdict. Brittany Caldwell was sentenced to probation, community service, and mandatory sensitivity training. She was also required to pay a fine and complete an anger management program. It wasn't prison time, but it was accountability. Maya watched as Brittany's carefully constructed facade finally crumbled, tears streaming down her face as the reality of her situation set in. For perhaps the first time in her life, Brittany Caldwell was facing consequences for her actions. After the verdict was read, Maya stepped outside the courthouse to find a small crowd of supporters waiting for her. Reporters shouted questions, cameras flashed, and strangers called out words of encouragement. She felt her mother's arm slip through hers, grounding her in the chaos. "How does it feel to get justice?" a reporter called out. Maya considered the question carefully. This was never just about me, she said finally. This was about everyone who's been told to stay quiet, to not make waves, to accept mistreatment because the person doing it has more power. Today, we proved that accountability matters, that dignity matters, that standing up for yourself matters. She paused, looking around at the faces surrounding her, her mother's tearful pride, her brother's fierce grin, Dorothy's gentle smile, Richard Morrison's nod of approval. I came to Chicago for an internship, Maya continued. I came to learn how to build things. But I think the most important thing I've learned is that building a better world starts with refusing to accept the one we have when it's unjust. Maya's internship ended in December, but her connection to Morrison and Associates did not. Richard Morrison offered her a full-time position upon graduation, with the specific understanding that she would continue working on the Bronzeville project. The community center was scheduled to break ground the following spring, and Maya would be there to see her designs become reality. On her last day as an intern, she stood in Richard Morrison's office, looking out at the city that had become unexpectedly important to her. You know, Morrison said, joining her at the window, when I first saw your portfolio, I knew you had talent. But talent is only part of what makes a great architect. What you showed on that plane, and in the months since, that's character. That's what will make you exceptional. Maya smiled. I almost didn't press charges, you know. Part of me just wanted to move on, to focus on the opportunity and forget the ugliness. But you didn't. No, because I realized that moving on and forgetting is how systems stay broken. It's how people like Brittany Caldwell never learn that their actions matter. She turned to face Morrison. I want to build spaces where everyone feels welcome, where people don't have to prove they belong. But I can't do that if I'm willing to accept being treated like I don't belong. Morrison nodded. The Bronzeville Center is going to be magnificent. And when it opens, every person who walks through those doors will know that they're entering a space designed by someone who understands what it means to fight for your place in the world. Maya returned to Spelman for her final semester, carrying with her the lessons of a summer that had transformed her. She gave talks at campus events about her experience, mentored younger students who were navigating their own challenges, and continued to refine her designs for the community center. The video of the plane incident never fully disappeared from the internet. It would resurface periodically, sparking new conversations each time. But Maya had made peace with its existence. The moment captured in those few minutes represented something important. A young black woman refusing to shrink, refusing to accept mistreatment, refusing to let someone else's hatred define her worth. Brittany Caldwell completed her community service hours at a nonprofit serving underprivileged youth in Chicago. Whether the experience changed her fundamental character, Maya would never know. But she had been required to face consequences, to acknowledge that her actions had been wrong. And that was more than many people like her ever experienced. The Bronzeville Community Center opened 3 years later, on a brilliant spring morning that felt like a promise. Maya stood at the entrance, watching as hundreds of neighborhood residents streamed through the doors she had helped design. The windows, tall and narrow, flooding the space with light, were exactly as she had envisioned them. The walls displayed artwork from local artists. The library section held thousands of books, including a children's corner named after Dorothy, who had passed away peacefully the previous year. Maya's mother was there, along with Marcus, who had just been accepted to architecture school himself. Richard Morrison gave a brief speech, crediting Maya as the creative force behind the center's design. The community members who had participated in the planning process offered their own words of gratitude and hope. When it was Maya's turn to speak, she looked out at the crowd and felt the weight of everything that had brought her to this moment. 3 years ago. She began. I boarded a plane to come to this city. I was nervous and excited and full of dreams. And on that flight, someone tried to make me feel like I didn't deserve any of it. The crowd was silent, listening. She was wrong. Not because of anything special about me, but because every person deserves to be treated with dignity. Every person deserves to pursue their dreams without being made to feel small. Every person belongs. Maya gestured to the building behind her. This center was built on that belief. It was built for the grandmother who wants a quiet place to read, and the teenager who needs help with college applications, and the little girl who dreams of designing buildings someday. It was built because this community deserves spaces that honor who they are and who they want to become. She paused, thinking of Dorothy, of the passengers who had testified on her behalf, of the colleagues who had supported her, of her mother who had always believed in her. When someone tries to tear you down, Maya concluded, the best response is to build something beautiful, something that will outlast their cruelty, something that proves they were wrong. The crowd erupted in applause. Children ran through the entrance, marveling at the space. Elderly residents found comfortable seats in the reading areas. Teenagers clustered around the computer stations. The building was alive with exactly the kind of community Maya had imagined. Later that evening, after the crowds had thinned and the sun had begun to set, Maya walked through the center alone. She ran her fingers along the walls she had designed, stood in the light filtering through the windows she had envisioned, breathed in the smell of new books and fresh paint. She thought about the girl she had been on that plane, scared, humiliated, alone. And she thought about the woman she had become, confident, purposeful, surrounded by people who believed in her. The journey between those two versions of herself had not been easy, but it had been necessary, because sometimes the worst moments of our lives become the foundations for our greatest achievements. Sometimes being pushed down is exactly what teaches us how to stand up. Maya Thompson had learned to stand. And now, she was building a world where others could do the same.